So there's a saying within the world of systems thinking that every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it's currently achieving. So if we're happy with 20% sort of gender diversity in certain parts of the profession, if we're happy with being 13th out of 16th on innovation in global rankings, then we don't have to do anything because we have a system that's actually perfectly designed to achieve those results. Clearly we're not happy with that, and so the lab approach and the work of the Engineering Change Lab is about how do we hack the system? How do we understand what's going on at a deeper and deeper level so we can fundamentally change the system that is the engineering profession to provide enhanced output or outcomes. And so we've employed something called social labs approach. And so social labs are part of a growing movement that's been kind of bubbling up around the globe over the last 15, 20 years of approaches to tackling large societal challenges. So challenges that are bigger than any one organization, but actually require a new type of collaboration and a new style of working at a systems level. And so social labs or change labs, you can use the words interchangeably, are multi-stakeholder platforms through which a diverse team of people work together to solve complex system level challenges in ways that are systemic. So this concept of, we're not just kind of staying in the ruts of the existing system, we're saying what's actually going on at a deeper level here and how can we change things at a more fundamental level. And collaborative, and this is the one that a lot of people sort of assume that they kind of get. It's like, I've worked in collaboration before, but labs are really challenging us to work in a much deeper collaboration than most of us are used to. The nature of the collaboration here is that there's a group of individuals and organizations that are coming together to put the greater good of a bigger systems change first, with the assumption that that will ultimately benefit all of our individual organizations and ourselves personally, which sounds really great and sounds sort of easy to kind of get behind, but it's actually where a lot of the tangible challenges of labs kind of come into play, as you have to actually make that work on a day-to-day basis when you're asking questions about resourcing and decision-making and whatnot. The third is this concept of working experimentally, and this is where the metaphor of a lab comes in. When you physically build, say, a chemistry lab, you probably have some sort of overall general goal, but you don't know how to get there yet. You have to actually to embark on a process of discovery. So you experiment, you try, you come up with a hypothesis, you try something, you learn, you experiment again. And so in the metaphor, in a social lab or a change lab, it's the exact same thing. As we have large, complex kind of systems challenges that we're still actually kind of learning and understanding the nature of those challenges, and we certainly don't know how to tackle them yet. So what we're doing is actually coming up with experiments, kind of bound experiments within the lab to actually interact with the system and try new hypotheses and learn. So the main sort of outcome is actually a learning outcome as opposed to more of a traditional approach where you might have like a very clear objective and a very clear pathway to get there, and you're just sort of scaling something and ramping up. This is for lab approaches or for a fundamentally different situation where you have a complex system level challenge where a different kind of more experimental approach is required. So this is kind of a little bit more in terms of defining where a lab approach is useful. So this is contrasting on the left the context of traditional problem solving, a complicated kind of situation. So complicated problems are one where the problem is clearly defined, it's generally confined to a single kind of sector or organization, people can agree on the solution, someone's clearly responsible. So the world is set up to solve these types of complicated problems. Doesn't mean they're easy. You can think of something like going to the moon. The goal is clear, you're going to the moon. It's not easy, but you can break it down into a series of different tasks and responsibilities that are somewhat repeatable. So we have lots of great tools, project management tools and approaches. This is sort of the default mode of society and of business and of most organizations right now, is the complicated world. On the other hand, on the right, what you have is the context of complexity. So this is where the problem has many sort of stakeholders and sectors involved. The problem itself can kind of change and evolve in unexpected ways. So even your starting understanding of the problem might be a little bit fuzzy. And no clear solution's been identified, and there's not clear accountability either. So you can think about something like solving bullying in a school. So you might want to convene a group to look at sort of how to actually minimize bullying in a school. Probably as you get into that topic, you're going to actually learn and understand what bullying is as you're kind of progressing and interacting. It's not a simple concept, and there's a lot of sort of different aspects and nuances to it. So part of the working in complexity is actually kind of constantly sort of understanding and deepening your understanding of the challenge itself. At the same time, if you're trying to actually make progress on bullying in school, it's unlikely that you're going to come up with a series of extremely repeatable steps that you could just sort of cut and paste from one school you made progress into another school. Because the schools in that environment, it's complex and adaptive. It's relationships and people that are changing in unexpected ways. So if you have a truly complex problem, new approaches are required, and that's what social labs or change labs are one such process. And the sort of typical outcomes of a lab approach that we're always trying to kind of progress is, one is new knowledge and skills. So in particular, that deeper understanding of the big picture challenge is the sort of is core knowledge that's always being evolved in the lab. The second is a network of leaders who are sort of coming together around this problem and deepening a shared understanding together and taking action together. The third is capacity building. So in particular, the capacity for these leaders that are coming together to work in this new way, to work experimentally and systemically and collaboratively, to work in a context of complexity. So there's tools and different approaches that you're introduced to through lab work that are important to achieving our goals. And finally is the idea of novel solutions. So these are the tangible experiments or actions of the lab. In our case, the initiatives of the lab. This is where you're actually interacting and saying, okay, based on our big picture thinking that we're developing together, what specific experiments do we want to try next? And what do we learn from those experiments? And how, with the successful experiments, can they kind of take root and start changing the broader system?